Wow, they just got quiet really fast. Huh? That's pretty awesome.
We're ready.
It must have been my my size.
It's tonality.
Yeah, it must have.
The tonality in your voice.
By a 140-pound, 5'6" Asian man. Okay, anyways. As you guys are aware, I try to change things up in regards to kind of technical and personal. And the next half of this presentation is going to be on something that's really dear to me. It's called, subject's mentorship. Now, I have a question for everybody. When I say the word mentorship, what does that mean? If someone could raise your hand and maybe just kind of jot up some answers.
They have a mentor or mentor someone.
That is correct.
Have a relationship.
Yeah. It's a relationship with an individual helping. Huh?
Someone is looking over your shoulder and basically sees what he's doing.
Yes, it's kind of like a guardian angel, somebody that you can always turn to for personal advice, business advice. Something that hardly exists. I actually agree. Yes,
I agree too.
Personally, Wikipedia. Yeah. I think with everybody online, everybody could go in chat rooms and Anyways, for me personally, I participate in a mentorship program. I mentor high school students when they're freshmen at in areas that are not I would say the most I guess affluent affluent areas. And my job as a mentor for these 15, 16-year-olds is just to kind of just be around. I'm not a parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a guardian. I'm just somebody that they can hang out with, so I can watch them basically develop, and then hopefully, I'm going to knock on wood, they graduate from high school, and then I could basically take them to college campuses and all that other good stuff. So it's really dear to my heart to kind of participate in a mentorship program. But for me, I do mentorships for high school. I know Alan is very dear in his heart in regards to mentorship, and he's going to do a presentation in regards to what he's passionate about. And I'm really, really, really honored to have him spend his time to talk to you guys about the passion that is mentorship. So I'm going to give the floor to you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Hi everyone, I'm Alan Saporta. I'm VP of Technology at Wilshire Media Group. I work with the folks that gave the first presentation, and I want to thank Michael for inviting me to speak about what I'm very passionate about, which is mentoring, more specifically career mentoring. Stuff that what Michael was doing was more for high school students. Career mentoring is actually for all of you. So what if I told you that you all had the power to give a gift so amazing and so impactful that the receiver of this gift would be talking about you for decades? Is that something that would be interesting to you?
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
What if you could be in receipt of such a gift? Would that be something you would be interested in? Oh. Or how about a more pragmatic question? I've been associated with mentoring, career mentoring, as I said, for nearly 2 decades. And the most popular question that I have addressed has been, how do I get promoted? That's what I keep getting asked all the time. What about career advancement? And if that's something that you're interested in, I'll have a powerful answer to that later on in the presentation. So, there's a saying, a very old saying, that goes like this. I'm not sure who said it. It says, when the pupil is ready, the master shall appear. And that very aptly describes how I got into mentoring. Because when I was in junior high school, I got a computer as a gift. And by the time I hit high school, I knew, or I thought I knew, that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I loved getting a computer to do something that it never did before. I loved creating something that never existed before through the computer. And I went went to university and I studied computer science and I loved it, and I got into the working world and I became a developer and I loved it. And that's all that I wanted to do, solve puzzles all day. Then a couple of years after I got out of school, at the beginning of my career at IBM, my manager, I was a team lead of a user interface group for a particular project. And my manager at the time, Mike Moran, called me into his office and he said, "Hey Alan, your team needs a manager, and I'd like you to be the manager. I think you'd be good at it." And I looked at him and I said, "A manager? Manage? You mean like hire people and do reviews and write objectives and like talk to people?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "No." Not interested at all. And he insisted. He's like, "No, I think you'd be good, really." And I said, "Really, thank you, no. I want to go back to my office. I want to put on my headphones. I want to rock out, and I want to write code all day. And that's it." And Mike insisted. He said, "I really, really want you to try it. And here's what we'll do. Try it for 6 months, and I will take you under my wing. I'll mentor you about what it means to be a manager, what it means to be a leader. And if after the end of 6 months you don't like it, it's fine. We'll make you an individual contributor again, and no black mark on your record. In fact, we will honor you for having tried it." Stepping out of the story very briefly, I just want to say that what Mike did at that moment was something very special. He created a space for me. He gave me a safety net to try something that I never thought I'd be interested in, right? I just wanted to code. And as it turned out, he became my first mentor. Now, it's unusual for your manager to be your mentor. It's actually quite rare, and I'll talk to you about why in a couple of minutes. But that's what was the case for me. And anybody, by the way, who has gone from an individual contributor to a manager, it's a transformation of yourself. It's not just one particular skill, communication or vision or strategy or what have you, or learning what the proper HR response is to every situation. You actually have to transform yourself. And so as part of my relationship with Mike, we talked about a lot of things, both in terms of business and also in terms of personal, on my journey to becoming a leader. And at the end of 6 months, I had this epiphany. Getting a team of people to create something that never existed before was far more complicated and challenging for me personally than getting a computer to do something it never did before. And ever since then, I have managed larger and larger technology teams and having a complete blast. Absolute complete blast. And it's because of Mike and that initial conversation 17 years ago that I'm doing what I love doing today. And here I am still talking about Mike 17 years later and still thanking him. Mike was my mentor actually for quite a long time, long after he was my manager and long after I left IBM, for a decade actually. And I have had several mentors in the intervening 20 years, and I've also started to mentor other folks because I wanted to give back. And so a couple of years ago, I wanted to think of a way to scale. I wanted to give other people, for other people to feel the same impact that I had long ago. It was such an amazing thing. I wanted to pay it back. And so I started a blog called On Mentoring. And since then, that's worked out. That's exceeded my expectations. I've had reprints of my postings in journals, and I've been flown to companies. Not too long ago, I was flown to Salesforce.com to talk about mentoring to their entire technology organization. I wanted to give back because it was very, very important for me to do that. And it led to things like why I'm here today and talking to all of you that I'm very excited about. So, what exactly is mentoring? Michael started off the session asking you what you thought. I'll start by defining it in the more traditional sense, where an older, more experienced person takes under their wing a younger, inexperienced novice, if you will, almost as an apprenticeship. And that's not a bad definition. That's what it is at its core. But I want to broaden that definition a little bit because I think it's changed and evolved and has become much more inclusive. For me, mentoring is a relationship between two people, and it's a set of conversations about a range of topics, any topic at all. It's a two-way conversation where after a period of time, both mentor and mentee or protege find that they're gaining benefit in both ways. It's actually a wonderful thing. I read another definition of mentoring recently that I liked a lot. And that definition said that mentoring is about three things. It's about learning, it's about dialogue, and it's about challenge. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. This traditional notion of a more experienced person taking on inexperienced, I'll give you one counterexample. Jack Welch, former CEO of GM, set up a mentoring program at his company, making his executives take on mentees. But in fact, for himself, he participated in this mentoring program. But he wasn't the mentor. He was the mentee. He actually went to a computer guy and had him mentor him on all aspects of technology. He wanted to understand what was the internet about, and so, again, breaking the notion that you have to be the older, wiser person necessarily in everything. You don't. Let me tell you what mentoring isn't. Okay? It's not coaching. There is a lot of overlap, but a question that I get a lot is, what's the difference between mentoring and coaching? Coaching is an activity that is focused on a particular skill, whereas mentoring is focused on the individual, on your personal growth and your advancement and your development. Another thing that coaching is not, that mentoring is not, rather, that coaching is that coaching is usually for pay, whereas mentoring is a far more altruistic activity. Both people make a time commitment and get value out of the relationship. Whereas with a coach, like, you can think of a particular skill, you'll pay somebody to coach you football or baseball or what have you, a particular skill, and focused on that particular performance in that skill. Next, I want to talk about the benefits of mentoring. You're probably wondering what's in it for me as a mentor, as a mentee. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about the benefits in three ways. You as a mentee, as a protege, seeking out a mentor. Most people find that more obvious. The benefits of you becoming a mentor, and the benefits of a company supporting a mentoring program. And benefits can be put into two categories. There's the quantitative and the qualitative one. For the mentee and the protege, some of the qualitative benefits are you have somebody to talk to, a safe place to be challenged, to ask questions, to ask for guidance. In fact, that's one of the reasons that it's not always great to have your manager be your mentor, because this is somebody that's going to be evaluating you at some point. And so you want to be able to just be completely free. Sometimes you need to talk to your mentor about your manager. How do I deal with him? How do I get a promotion? Right? And so it gives you the space in order to work with somebody to do that. Another really great benefit of being a mentee is networking, right? I mean, if you've ever searched for a job, and I assume most of us have been in a job search in this room, you know that it's who you know. It's the ability to network, because you don't know who's going to introduce you to the person that's going to get you your next job or your next gig or what have you. And so, especially for us introverts, us engineering introverts, some of us, having a mentor be a safe person that you can work with and then introduce you to their peers or people up the chain is a great advantage. I know that that was one that was for me. Now I'll give you some quantitative benefits, which frankly have still surprised me when I read these out loud. So this comes from, there's been more and more recent studies on mentoring and the benefits for career mentoring. One is that people who participate in a mentoring program as mentees were shown to earn between $5,610 a year to $22,450 a year more than people who weren't participating in the mentoring program.
Makes sense.
In another study, it does make sense. In another study of 1,000 employees done over a 5-year period, they found that people who participated in the mentoring program as mentees, as proteges, were promoted 5 times more often than those who did not participate in the mentoring program. So if you think about career advancement, you have statistics to back you up to look for a mentor. I'll tell you a story about one of my mentees. 7 years ago, I worked at a financial services company, and I took on a mentee. His name was Michael. He was a tech lead. And we started to have our conversations, and he asked me the very famous question, how do I get promoted? What's the key? And I'm not going to talk specifically about, this is not about how to get promoted in a session, but I'll very quickly, I started talking about, well, you want to be a go-to person. You want to be perceived as an expert in your organization. You want to be very articulate in your communication. You want to feel comfortable with public speaking. And he said, hold it. I said, yes. He said, I'm extremely nervous about public speaking. And I understand that. Actually, people rank fear of public speaking as #1 over death as one of the fears. Go look it up, it's true. So I could understand that my mentee Michael was nervous about public speaking, so we started to talk about that. What's behind the fear? And I started to give him some suggestions. I said, take the Art of Presentation class, which is a public speaking class that I took myself, and it was, by the way, the best class I've taken since leaving university. And he listened to my advice. He took that class twice. And then we kept talking, and I told him to seek out opportunities for public speaking, and he started to do that. And fast forward, 7 years later, he is now chief architect at the Federal Reserve, and he's an architect responsible for a platform that brings in $6 billion to the federal government. And as part of his job as chief architect of the Federal Reserve, is he flies around to different Federal Reserve banks, speaking in front of hundreds of other architects and technologists, evangelizing different technologies, talking about the platform. And all this from a guy that I got to speak with and mentor 7 years ago. So there's a really great advantage. And then there's also the impact that I myself had when I was mentoring. So showing that there are benefits to being mentored is pretty obvious. But what about if you are the mentor? What are some of the benefits there? So a couple minutes ago, I mentioned how many times a mentee gets promoted over people who don't participate. Do you remember how many times on average people get promoted? 5, right? Same study of 1,000 employees over a course of 5 years. People who participated in the mentoring program as mentors were promoted 6 times more often than those who didn't participate. Now, I was surprised actually, as more often, but then it kind of made sense, right? The way you get promoted is you become a go-to person. People come to you for advice. People like coming to you for advice. And when people feel that you become a natural leader, you have this attraction, you're going to be recognized for that. And so that was a fantastic statistic. Same benefit for mentee as mentoring, networking, right? You don't know who's going to get you your next job. It could be somebody that you're mentoring today. So networking is a fantastic benefit. A third benefit for a mentor is you get an additional perspective you may not have gotten, right? If you have the more traditional, you have a younger person, you might get a younger person's perspective on things, like Jack Welch getting a perspective of somebody who was a technologist that he didn't have. One of my mentors, Jim, also at the financial services company, I was not part of his organization. Again, you don't want to be in the same chain. 6 months into our mentoring relationship, he was talking to me about a particular situation, kind of a spiky situation with some folks on his team. And he asked me for advice. That was kind of weird. But he said, what do you think about this? And so I thought about it, and I told him what I thought. And then a couple of weeks later, he came back to me and said, hey, thanks, that really helped out a lot. And so, as a mentor, as a decision maker, the more perspectives you get, the more information you get, usually leads to a better decision. And so that's another advantage. And then the final advantage, which is the most important one for me, is you get to have an impact on somebody else's life. Like me with Michael. I am really honored that I could have had us, participate in a small way in him going from a kind of a nervous tech lead to a chief architect. That is actually, I think, the biggest advantage for me personally as a mentor. So how about to the company? Okay, what about a company that is interested or is not so sure whether they want to support a formal or informal mentoring program? Again, going back to some statistics, and I quote, employees involved in a mentoring program have retention rates of 72% on average, compared with 49% not in the program. Now this is from that same large study, but it's pretty common across. You get retention. Why do you get retention? Folks, employees who get mentoring at a company perceive that their company cares about them, cares about their career development. They have consistently shown higher job satisfaction. And so think of it, for a relatively low cost, you can have happy, excited, productive employees. The happier the employees are, typically the more productive they are, and the better the bottom line. And so it's a pretty low-cost way for having that amazing impact. So the first part of this presentation has all been about what is mentoring and what are the benefits. The second part is more of a workshop. Hopefully some of you have started thinking about seeking out mentors for yourself and getting those benefits or becoming a mentor even better. So I want to talk a little bit about some steps to do that. And I have a handout later with some of these steps written down, so you don't have to take any notes. Just come by and pick it up. How do you find a mentor? That is the _1 question that I get on my blog. It's the _1 set of search terms that people search for to get to my blog. How do I find it? I get that it's different. So I'm going to give you some steps. The first step is to identify a set of candidates. Okay? So think in your life about people who you want to emulate. Perhaps it's people up the chain, perhaps it's not directly up the chain, but on the side, or perhaps it's an entrepreneur you know. Make a list of these candidates, okay? And think about why you two would make a good match. The second step is once you've identified this list of candidates, start with your first candidate and set up a short meeting. Nothing more than 30 minutes. Could be over coffee, could be over lunch. And stick to the 30 minutes and start the meeting by saying, I'd like you to mentor me, and tell them why. Now, a lot of people are nervous about approaching someone about mentoring. But I'll tell you, don't be nervous. It's a very flattering moment. I mean, imagine yourselves, somebody coming up to you and saying, I really admire you. I want to be like you. Can you spend some time teaching me to be like you? Would anybody be offended by that? Of course not. So don't be afraid to ask people, because what they'll say no. Okay, fine. They say no. Go to your next person. And be patient. I should say be patient with setting up this meeting. People who are usually sought after to be mentors, or tend to be executives, tend to be very busy. Just be patient. Just get on the calendar. Don't take anything personally. And then have the meeting and see if there's a match. At the end of this meeting, if the person says yes, great, terrific. Start to set up regular times and start to have conversations. We're going to talk about what those conversations are going to be. And if the person says no, again, don't take it personal. You don't know what's going on in that person's life. They may already be mentoring. I know, through my blog and through these speaking engagements, I get asked all the time, can you be my mentor? And I have 3 to 4 active mentors now. And to have a career and a family and 3 or 4 mentors is just too much, right? But there's plenty of people out there that would make fantastic mentors It's not just one perfect person. So don't take it personally if the person says no. Just go to your next candidate. So what are some qualities to look for in a mentor, to look for in your candidates? The first and most important thing is they need to be trustworthy. This is a place where you're going to be vulnerable, at least in the best relationships. You're going to be vulnerable, and you want your mentor to also be vulnerable in giving you the best advice. And so you need to find somebody that you feel you can trust. And that person, that mentor, needs to be authentic with you. They need to be there and tell you what's on their mind and give you real feedback. And you need to be authentic with them to get the maximum out of the relationship. The next thing you need from a mentor is for somebody to be personally involved. You want somebody to be present and with you, not doing their email while you're talking. Right? The third thing you need from a prospective mentor is someone that listens. You need a good listener. You need somebody that will actively listen to what you want to talk about and to figure out how you can advance your career, whatever the topics are. The fourth thing you want is someone who they themselves continues to improve. You want somebody that's interested in continuous improvement for themselves because they'll understand why you care about it for yourself and your career. And the last really important quality that you want in a mentor is someone that assumes you're great, that will build you up. You don't want someone that's going to give you feedback and criticize and cut you down. No, you want somebody that starts with you being great and wants to bring you up to here. That's the kind of mentor you want to have. So for those of you considering becoming a mentor, how do you be a good mentor? There's three main things. There's actually four things, but there's three main things first I want to talk about. Number one, you got to make a time commitment. This is very, very important. Especially at the beginning of a mentoring relationship, it should be regular. For me, an hour every couple of weeks is great, or a half hour every week, or whatever it is. It needs to be regular, and it needs to be a time commitment. Otherwise, the relationship is going to die. Okay? So time commitment is important. You have to be ready to do that. The second thing is, as I said, you have to be a good listener. You really have to listen to your mentee or protege and care about them and seek out their success. And the third thing is you have to be trustworthy. This is a what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of activity. Okay? The fourth thing that I want to mention that to be a good mentor that you don't have to have is you don't have to have all the answers. Some people make that mistake. I don't want to be a mentor. They're going to ask me something I don't know. You don't have to have all the answers. In fact, some of the most powerful experiences that I have had as a mentor is when my mentee asked me something that I didn't know and we figured it out together. We either talked to other people or we did research ourselves. So you don't have to have all the answers. Don't let that stop you from helping somebody out. I have one slide only on this presentation. And this is something that a mentor is not. This is a Dilbert cartoon. For those of you who can't see, I'll read it to you. Pointy-haired boss tells Dilbert, Matt is fresh out of engineering school. You will be his mentor. Whatever you do, don't crush his spirit before Wednesday. Dilbert asks his boss, why put it off so long? The boss answers, because I bet $10 we could string along until Thursday. So a mentor is not somebody who is spirit crushing. Just don't forget that. Now, how about, what does it take to be a good mentee, a good protege? Three things again. And it's the exact same things, the exact first three things that I mentioned that it takes to be a good mentor. You have to make a time commitment. You have to be a good listener, because if the mentor is giving you advice and you don't listen, what's the point? You have to listen to that advice and at least consider it and show that you've listened to it. You don't have to take it, you don't have to actually act on it, but you have to be a good listener and actually take it in. And the third thing is, you also have to be trustworthy for the same reasons that I explained before. The fourth thing that a mentee or protege has to be that a mentor doesn't necessarily is you have to be proactive. It is very rare that people who can mentor are going to seek out things to occupy their time. As a mentee, you have to be proactive. You have to go out there and find a mentor and come up with topics to talk about. It's not just setting up the meeting, it's also saying, how do I get promoted, or how do I deal with this person, or how do I deal with this situation, or what could I do to better myself in X, Y, and Z. So you have to be proactive. It's very, very key. So I hope that tonight I've inspired you to either become a mentor or become a mentee, or preferably both, or at the very least support mentoring in your organization or those that seek it out. I've discussed the benefits. I've hopefully given you some concrete steps, and like I said, there's a handout you can take to remind you of these. Because for me personally, if I could create a room full, or a city full, or a country full, or a world full of mentors and mentees, of masters and pupils, that would be the greatest thing in the world for me. And I'm sure there are mentors and mentee candidates right now, so you can actually take the first step right now and start talking to people during the breakout or after we're done. Thanks very much for letting me talk about this. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I'm wondering how a small to medium-sized company sets up a mentorship program. You mentioned Welch, and he has a massive company to connect people that are outside of different divisions. But what about a smaller company?
That's a great question. So it doesn't have to be a formal mentoring program. You're right. It's the larger companies that set up formal mentoring programs like a GM, like a Schwab. An informal mentoring program can be set up simply by the executives in that company saying, we support the idea of mentoring. This is what mentoring is. If you start taking some time out of your day to pursue this activity, we would support it and we would encourage it. And if you need help matching people up, if you're a mentee and you're not sure who to talk to and you want me to talk to somebody or convince them that this is a good thing for both of you, let me do it. And just that enough will do wonders, even in a small company. Thanks.
So, my fair lady is a good example of mentor.
You know, I haven't seen that movie in a really long time. If I recall correctly, it's about a particular skill, isn't it? Isn't it about making the person very ladylike? Is that
Actually,
right?
it's not about particular skill. She was learning good language, but at the same time she was learning how to eat properly. You know, it's a lot of stuff.
I guess so. I guess so. Mentoring is about a range of topics, so now I'll have to go rent it this weekend and get back.
How detailed do you go in their personal life when you are mentoring them? For example, do you tell them you need to work on their confidence? Do you go that way, or you don't go?
Yeah, you do actually. It's you know, I mentioned that it's career mentoring, but how many of us can actually separate our personal lives and our personal attitude from our careers? You don't come to work and leave your entire personal life at home, right? How you feel about yourself and your skills comes with you to work. And so you want to create a trusting space because you do very often get into things like confidence. I mean, the example that I gave with Michael was about confidence, about being able to publicly speak. So the answer is absolutely, you get into all sorts of things. And the beauty is you don't know where it's going to go. But a lot of times, a couple of months down the road, it takes you to some really surprising and wonderful places where both people learn something about themselves. So the answer is definitely yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Will meeting people be over lunch or phone call instead, or maybe?
You mean in terms of logistics, setting it up with your mentor?
Maybe just a phone call.
Skyping or whatever? Right. That's a good question. So what are the logistics? I think the best mentoring programs do happen in person. There's a lot that you gain from somebody's body language. A mentor may want to see how you react to a particular question. So in person would be best, but that's not always possible. I mean, I mentor people now. None of the people I mentor are in Los Angeles. I actually have some mentees that fly down to me to have occasional mentoring sessions, although we usually do it over Skype. So in person is best, but if you can, you can mentor, you can coach somebody over the phone or over Skype too. It's better if it's in person at the beginning, and then it can migrate to that. Did you have a question, sir? Yes, sir.
I gotta ask, have there been post to your blog mentor horror stories, like a divorce mentor situation? Or advice that went horribly wrong?
Advice on horror? No, I haven't had that. Although maybe I should post about something like that. Luckily, I haven't experienced that. Usually, you find out pretty quick whether this is somebody you can trust. You want to do that in the first set of conversations. I haven't had any horror mentoring stories or advice went wrong, but I have had where a mentor and mentee just didn't hit it off, and it's like, oh, this is not going to work out, and you just get out, you just disengage. You say, thank you for your time, and go your separate ways. So luckily, I haven't had any like terrible horror stories. But now I'm going to go looking for them just because you asked.
This is in line. This is in line with don't use your manager as a mentor. Because I had a very bad experience with one that pretended to be one and turned out not to be.
Did you catch that actually? So he says one of the reasons he had an experience where his manager was his mentor, and it ended up not.
Yeah, he was just being a usurious person who was trying to get things his way.
As in any
and pretending to be your friend in the process.
As in any, it doesn't have to be your boss, anybody that where you're going to be vulnerable and talk about personal things, it can go badly, right? That's just human nature. You want to be careful. Luckily, I don't hear a lot of those stories myself. And again, you want to avoid your manager being your mentor, because a lot of people talk to me about their managers. It's funny. Oh, yes, sir.
Do you actually have to know the person? Is there like a mentorship eHarmony?
There are actually there are mentorship eHarmonies. I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, but they're more large companies will employ them to actually go into the company, set up questionnaires for people who are interested in the programming, and then set up matches. So those kinds of systems absolutely exist. They tend to be used by large companies. I don't know of any that's publicly available for, just find somebody. Maybe that's a business idea for any entrepreneurs out there. But that's a good question. Maybe I'll start one. Maybe we'll start one.
You gotta at least do it. Let's do it.
That's a good question. Anything else? Okay, great. Well, come get the handout. Come and chat with me, and thanks again very much.
We're gonna do a raffle, and